Have you ever felt like you're captaining a small boat in a storm rather than driving a compact sedan when you hit highway speeds? If you own a Hyundai Accent Blue, that floating sensation in the steering wheel and that distinct hop from the rear end over expansion joints is something you probably know all too well. Today we are getting underneath the car to understand exactly why this happens. And frankly, the suspension setup on the Accent Blue is a bit of a mixed bag because it tries to balance budget engineering with comfort, but often ends up confusing the driver. Up front, we have a standard McPherson strut setup, which is pretty typical for this class, but the damping tuning is surprisingly soft. When you push on the front fender, you can see it rebounds almost like an old luxury car, which is great for soaking up city potholes at 30 kilometers per hour, but terrible for stability at 110. The real culprit, however, is at the back. We're looking at a coupled torsion beam axle rear suspension. Now, this is cost-effective and durable, but on the Accent Blue, the bushings and the shock absorbers are tuned so softly that the rear end struggles to settle down after a bump. If you take a corner and hit a mid-corner undulation in the rear of the car, does a little sidestep, which can be genuinely terrifying if you're not expecting it. It is not just about the parts, it is about the geometry. The caster angle up front does not give enough self-centering force, which leads to that vague on-center feel where you are constantly making micro-corrections on the straight highway. I noticed that when I loaded the trunk with just 2 suitcases, the rear squat was significant, which changes the front geometry even more, making the steering feel even lighter. It feels like the car is tiptoeing rather than planting its feet. For those of you looking to fix this, you do not need to turn it into a race car. A set of slightly stiffer rear shocks often solves about 50% of that wallowing behavior. We also need to talk about the body roll. There's a lot of it. The stock sway bars are quite thin, and because the center of gravity feels a bit high for a sedan of this size, the car leans heavily before it takes a set in a turn. This body roll, combined with the flat seats, means you're holding onto the steering wheel for support, which is bad driving posture. So, is the handling dangerous? No, not really, because the electronic stability control kicks in aggressively if you get too wild. But is it confidence-inspiring? Absolutely not. It is a suspension designed strictly for comfort at speeds under 80 kilometers per hour. If you drive mostly in the city, it is actually quite pleasant because it ignores sharp edges, but the moment you demand performance or highway stability, the stock setup shows its limitations. It is a soft cruiser in a segment where competitors are getting sharper, and that is the trade-off you make for the price point.